It all started 23 years ago. The doctor said, "It's not an RPG fan." Contrary to popular belief, I didn't always play video games, which is why there are no records of me prior to '03. This was the year I truly started playing video games, so pretty much the year I was truly born, which you know what that means. I'm a minor. I remember my first experiences with the medium being in the arcade. You go to the laundromat as a kid and you're a big fan of the dryer, but then as soon as you lay eyes on the Galaga in the corner, well, the laundry fandom lost a member. The classics, Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Galaga, these were my favorites, so you know I'm fun at parties. My first video game experiences, and to this day, they're some of my most beloved titles. Sort of lame to say. Saying you love arcade games and your favorite is Pac-Man is like saying squares are my favorite boxes. Like, yeah, it's true, but who cares? It's such a basic answer. Anybody who hears you like arcade games wants to hear something more elaborate or obscure, but I'm not gonna say I give a shit about clacks for respect. I love those old Namco classics. They were and still are some of my favorite experiences. They're so simple and are pretty much the same song and dance every time you play them, but their gameplay never gets old. Around this time was when I discovered the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was hooked up at my grandma's house in the den area. I remember distinctly a goldfish cracker was lodged in the cartridge slot. Yeah, try it. It works. This was my cousin's old system, and he left it there alongside a shoebox full of games. These are human teeth. Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. I easily played this one the most. Keep in mind, I really fucking hated ducks. Using the zapper gun was so cool, and swapping over to Super Mario Brothers let me live out my fantasy of looking at sewage-colored man. Super Mario Brothers 3 was there too. God, what a game. Every time I play it, I discovered something new. Holy shit. Excite Bike and Ninja Turtles 1 and 3 and Kung Fu Heroes and Adventures of Bayou Billy because there always has to be a 7th. But I didn't want to be a mooch, I wanted to be this. So I eventually received my other cousin's hand-me-down Sega Genesis Model 2. It came with a cartridge of Sonic the Hedgehog and I officially gave up on life. This opened a world of possibilities and closed another. I'm a video game owner now. Mom! Sonic the Hedgehog was the first standalone video game I ever owned. I played it so much I couldn't get past the second zone. Me personally, I blame the controller. Why did I always play with butter in my hands? Eventually, for my birthday, I received a purple Game Boy Advance, my first brand new game system. The game I got with it? Sadly, this was after my butter phase. Licensed kids games were abundant, and I played them for all they were worth. However, I also had Mario Kart Super Circuit, Yoshi's Island, Super Mario Advance 3, and Super Mario Advance 2 Super Mario World. This was my game. I played this to death. Until I got stuck at this one part where you finish a level and then the world map tells you to go f*** yourself. I loved the world, the power-ups, that sense of discovery. This was my first true video game love. Throughout that year, I got really into shapes, so for my next birthday, I got a GameCube alongside the Game Boy Player attachment, letting me play all my Game Boy games on the TV. I mainly owned just licensed games for the console, but still adored it nonetheless. I had to go to my friend's house to play actual video games, like Pac-Man Fever. That Christmas, I received a blue Game Boy Advance SP and a colorblind diagnosis. A few years later, I snagged my cousin's PlayStation alongside a disc-only copy of Gran Turismo and the demo for Rascal. I didn't play this much. 2007, I got a Nintendo DS Lite, and by 2008, I got my Wii, and I played so much Wii Sports and Wii Play, Mario Galaxy, Smash Bros. Brawl, GoldenEye 007, Mario Kart Wii, WarioWare Smooth Moves, alongside discovering my love for the history of gaming. I could download classic titles with this system, even the ones I played at my grandma's house. There was no need for her anymore. That was roughly my childhood gaming experience. After this, while I still received some game systems as gifts, I was a lot more conscious of the stuff I wanted. I wasn't as dependent on whatever my parents thought I might like. I knew I wanted a Wii U because it was better than wanting meth, but I didn't even scratch the surface of all the Nintendo 64 I played at others' houses, each and every game I owned, and what they meant to me, how I played and couldn't get past the first level for dozens of hours of Frogger's Adventures on Game Boy Advance, a 40-minute long game. But hopefully this gave you a good idea as to what I was raised on, what games and consoles made me who I am today. Notice how Lufia 2 wasn't mentioned? No! Based on my childhood gaming experiences, it should be fairly obvious I enjoy more arcadey games. Now, what does that mean? Outside of me being wrong, well, it doesn't mean it has to be from the arcade. More so, it retains elements of arcade gameplay. Look at Pac-Man, for example. I can all day. Quick reflexes, simple controls, easy to grasp concept, anybody can pick it up and play, but very few can master it. Have you seen professional Pac-Man players? No, they live in the Vatican. The concepts at play here really matter to me. If a game is like this at all, I'm gonna sleep well that night. This is probably why platforming is my favorite genre of gaming. You run and jump, it can't get much simpler than that. To anybody who has an argument against that, my mom never got Tetris. Pong? My grandma said, what the f is that? But with platformers, I mean, they would 100% not be able to play them well. well, but they at least understand what you're supposed to do and the objective. It's just like life. Get to the end. Running and jumping, there are an endless amount of things you can do with that. You can be a plumber, an evil plumber, a plumber's girlfriend. I value simplicity at face value, where like, oh, this is super easy to get, but when you dig deeper, you find all these elements that add up to the game being as good as it is. So just because my favorite genre is platformers doesn't mean I'll get sweaty for Leps World 2. No, you take games like Super Mario Galaxy, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Sonic Mania, Mega Man X, Celeste, you start playing them and immediately you're like, I get it, I understand how to play, what to do, and why people give a shit. But then you start to notice amazing design details that went into all aspects of the gameplay, realizing, wow, this game is a masterclass of design. This affects that, and that can't be there without this. That's what turns an already great game into a masterpiece. I love the pick up and play nature of platformers, how you get instant gratification when you jump. You're like, wow, I did that. When you defeat an enemy, when you just barely cross a gap, there's a rhythm to it all. It may be one of the most generic video game genres, like it's what I immediately think of when video game gets brought up, but I think it's for good reason. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to other genres. I love puzzle games for a lot of the same reasons. Rhythm games can be incredibly satisfying and addictive. Adventure games are a dream to get completely submerged in. Shooters I'm awful at, but they can be a blast. Get to the fucking Xeno shit! I don't like RPGs. Now, what is an RPG? Why would you ask me? Role-playing games are games where the player controls the actions of a character and / or several party members immersed in some well-defined world. Technically speaking, this genre definition can be linked to pretty much most games regardless of genre. Take any game. You are controlling the actions of a character and are immersed in a well-defined world. The definition of an RPG can be a bit hazy. I've seen people call the fucking economy an RPG. But you can't fool me. RPGs, just like a cloud, I know one when I see it. Oh, there's no debate. Let us go into some of the characteristics of traditional RPGs. Number 1, elf shit. Fantasy is generally the go-to genre of the genre. It kind of stems from the origins of video game RPGs, which were tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons. I'll stick to Yahtzee. Of course, an RPG can be set in any kind of world, but just like how puzzle games love the colored shape trope, fantasy is the go-to here. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some of my best friends are a fantasy. Wait your turn, f***er! The de facto setup for RPGs most think of is the turn-based RPG. I don't want to wait to be disappointed. This isn't a pregnancy! So let's look at how a turn-based RPG works. You're exploring this vast world and experiencing a story as it unfolds. That's the point of most RPGs, to create a universe that you want to get lost in. Tell a story unlike any other with some of the most memorable characters out there. This is why video games are such a popular medium to tell stories through. You are a character. The story is happening to you. Your friends in the game start to feel real if it's done right. Most role-playing games heavily depend on an engaging story, and of course stories need conflict, so what happens when danger strikes? Well, I'm walking around enjoying myself thinking, what's next? Homicide. Here's a list of things I can do. I can attack. I usually perform some special ability like existence. Well, that didn't do a damn thing. Or just give up, run, bitch out, they don't care. So I select what I want to do. I watch the character do what I told them to do. Then it's the enemy's turn, because it's only fair. They attack. Thanks. And now we're back to me. I'll probably attack again. Actually, it might be a good time to heal myself with some medicine. Good, I brought Dayquil. Alright, and it's their turn again. They attack. And now we're back to me again. Alright. Obviously, there's nothing inherently wrong with turn-based battles. It's a time-tested gameplay style. If it was completely outdated and uninteresting, it would have been ripped out of games eons ago. There's a reason text-based adventure games died out and their technology is being reused on Tinder. We still get turn-based battles in games constantly. They obviously work. There is depth here, and most video game players like them. The biggest media franchise on the planet is Pokemon, and it's a turn-based RPG. It works. But want to see why Scott's a fucking idiot? I can see it! So the point of a role-playing game is to make me feel as if I'm playing a role. If I'm supposed to be immersed as this character, why are battles set up like this? This is potentially the worst way to immerse me in an experience. When would my mortal enemy bat number 4 wait for me to pick an attack and then let her rip? Why would I give them a chance to hurt me? That's just counterproductive! In going through my list of attacks I can perform, it doesn't make me feel like I'm the one performing them. It feels like I'm commanding that character to do it. Turn-based combat almost feels at odds with the rest of what these games are trying to do. If it's trying to make me feel as if I am the character, going to the extent of having me name them myself, why are the battles like puppet shows? Well, I guess you could view RPGs as a performance. The origins of tabletop RPGs, you announce everything you're doing as if it's a book being written right there on the spot. So there's some showmanship to it all. It's a role-playing game, so it's like these are actors taking on the roles of these characters. So again, why can I name this guy myself if I'm playing the role of him? Most of the time, the actor doesn't pick the character's name. I just don't feel like I'm doing anything in these battles. Clicking through a menu doesn't feel like I'm accomplishing anything, and landing a great attack, I just don't feel incredibly accomplished. I selected a menu option. I'll play Pac-Land for that, thank you. Taking turns just slow things down so much. Like, what is he waiting for? Just shoot me! To be fair, I mean, it does offer strategy. You have to sit and think sometimes. Like, how do I want this man to gut me? Not every game should have action-packed combat. It's good to have options. I just fucking hate this one. Out of all the games to have a ton of enemy encounters, why do RPGs have them the most? They go on forever, and there's a million of them you have to go through, all against the same enemies over and over again. Think of everything you could do with all that time.
Nope. I got nothing.
And then there's the fact that many of these games have random encounters. All right, here we are, number 3. Oops! Oh good, I try to make my way from point A to point B, but I'll randomly be forced to partake in a battle. I don't even see the enemies when I run into them. Like, what's the context of this happening? Oh wow, here I am.
Hey.
Sure, it keeps you on your toes, but it's like, how often do I have to be on my toes? Man, this is painful. It's like, yeah, it's a surprise. You always have to be ready for a battle, but on your way to a location, you can expect at least 2 or 3 random battles thrown in there. So at that point, it's not a surprise. I'm expecting it. Did these need to happen? Do they make the game better? No! But to be fair, lots of non-RPGs have random enemy placements that don't need to be there. Like, I could give a shit about your Goomba placement, but these random encounters happen out of nowhere. You don't even see where the enemies are. You just randomly get thrown into a battle. You can't easily avoid this, and when you're in the battle itself, it takes just as long as any standard battle in the game, battles that are required for progression.
Well, it's more fun to get shot by surprise than to know ahead of time.
Well, I guess random encounters are here because another big element of RPGs are experience points, leveling your character up from string cheese weak to being stronger than any being. I can do anything now. I can stomach playing Final Fantasy. Number 4, feeling like you did something today. Having a visual indication of just how much stronger you get after each and every battle is unbelievably satisfying. I think experience points, or EXP, make RPGs for people. You know just how long it takes to go through a whole battle with an ant. And that ant can kick your ass, like it puts up a fight. But then a few hours in, you level up and you're more powerful. You can one-shot kill those ants. Character development. I'm now better than ants. But you know what you have to do in so many of these games? You have to grind for your experience points. You have to wander around, get into random encounters, and just win a bunch of battles to level up before you progress. Of course, most of the time, you don't have to, but it's kinda necessary if you don't want to stain the carpet with your decapitated head. Grinding almost feels like I'm exploiting the game sometimes. Like, is this really how the game was designed? For me to walk around in circles for 2 hours doing nothing but getting into random battles fighting weak enemies to gain extra experience? I just killed snails for 20 minutes. I'm ready to take on Satan. What about the stories of these games? That's why you play them. So here we have number 5, incredible, engaging, long-winded, weird as hell plots. Video games can house some of the greatest tales ever told, and it seemed like RPGs were the only way to tell those kind of stories years ago. And I think there's a clear reason to make a story into a video game compared to just a movie or a book. It's the experience. There are tons of video game stories that are great. They would blow as a film. The stories of many iconic RPGs play out almost like they're a 4,000-page novel with stupid haircuts. Oh, and you have to do the same thing 400 times. A lot of these stories are great with huge moments of emotion. Character deaths mean more because when you're doing turn-based battles, you often have multiple party members. If one of them died, it stings that much more. It can be so much more effective than other mediums to tell the story. But then you have the other side of RPGs where I can't take this seriously. I am a prince talking to a mechanic. Okay. Now we have one of the big ones. Number 6. These games never fucking end. My god, why do these take so long? Role-playing games are generally on the longer side of things. At the least, they can usually run you 20 hours from start to finish. As somebody who really just wants to experience as many video games as possible, why would I want to play one 50-hour game when I could play 5 10-hour ones? I know many want games to be as long as possible. I saw people complain how Final Fantasy VII Remake was only 30 hours. My weekend's 48 hours. What am I going to do with that extra 18? I don't know. I personally get a little turned off when I hear how long a game is. I've never been a big, I better be able to squeeze this many hours out of a game kind of guy. But I totally understand if people are like that. It's just, I don't care if a game's 10 hours, that sounds like a pretty sweet length to me. But RPGs are so long because they have so many battles, and so many of those battles are the same things over and over again. It's just the amount of time I spend in these games, I don't feel it's justified. And then we have number 7. Sensory overload. What the f am I looking at? Is this really the least complicated they could have made this menu look? I want to get the Black Desert menu on my back. These games have such thick-ass menu systems with sub-menus and sub-menus and tutorials on how to use the menus, and honestly, fairly unnecessary user interfaces that overcomplicate what could be a simple and intuitive experience. RPGs can be f***ing anything. I was talking to someone and they catfished me. I've been only talking about turn-based RPGs, but what about action RPGs, strategy RPGs, MMO RPGs, JRPGs, which is just if a role-playing game is made in Japan. That's it. Action RPGs are like Take out the turns and just make them just normal fights. Oh, hit this button to attack. Oh, thank God. I gotta say though, a lot of action RPGs just feel like hack and slashes or shooters with numbers. MMORPGs, let's take this and pair it up with Omegle. Look at these players online. These are my type of people. We all know how to use menus. Strategy RPGs, I got nothing. These are all such different types of games, and so many games outside of RPGs have RPG elements. You can make an argument that any one of these games are RPGs. Madden, look at all these stats. How is this not an RPG? People constantly make the argument Zelda's an RPG. Sure, keep telling yourself that. It has RPG elements, pretty much any of the sins I mentioned, and then some. I give up. I lost. Let's start with a few that started it all. Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. Dragon Quest, or Dragon Warrior originally over here in America. Playing this now, it is so simple and basic, but there's a charm to it, and many of the systems we see in RPGs today, they're here in full force. It's weird to say a game like this has aged well, because it hasn't, but when you put it side by side to modern RPGs, you start to notice more similarities than differences. Dragon Quest has always been an RPG staple, primarily in Japan. Over here, it's not as celebrated. Come on, this is America. I like Mickey Mouse and fucking my wife. But Dragon Quest has always been there. I'm surprised how many people I've run into who immediately recognizes the slime enemy from the series. The spin-offs are all over the place, like Dragon Quest Swords on Wii, which is pretty much a Dragon Quest game played in first person with a ton of automated movement and motion controlled combat. You just swipe away at the enemies, and overall it feels like a Dragon Quest game for a fucking idiot. I love it. But of course, we have Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Number 8, ass-long titles. Oh my god. This game is so lovely. Like, it's just so happy. Even when dark moments happen, this is just such a jolly world. These characters' designs are so fun. I'm not a fan of more typical anime-esque designs, but with Dragon Quest, I like this style. It just feels so nice. The characters, the monsters, even the gameplay. Sure, the battles are more tedious than if it wasn't a traditional RPG, but it's not that annoying. I like this game. I just don't want to spend 100 hours liking it. But then we have Final Fantasy, easily the most iconic RPG series. While Dragon Quest was far more traditional in terms of fantasy world with dragons, beat the evil, Final Fantasy continues to go all over the place. Again, this is a prince. Each Final Fantasy is pretty much completely separate from the last, which is how we get such game titles as Final Fantasy 13-2. The Final Fantasy game I played the most is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I like it, but like I said, action RPGs just don't feel like RPGs to me. They feel like hack and slash games with stats. This series hasn't always been turn-based, and that's not even counting junk like spin-offs. Final Fantasy 11 and 14 are MMORPGs. Am I the only one to find that bizarre that mainline numbered titles in the Final Fantasy series are MMOs? Like, why not make them their own designated spin-off series like Final Fantasy Online, but alright. 15 and 7 Remake are action RPGs, no turns here. This was done to give Final Fantasy more broad appeal and make it so a FIFA fan could play it. So I gotta be honest, I have a lot more fun with this gameplay style, but I almost feel patronized playing it, like I'm too dumb to enjoy the older games, so here's some flashier bullshit. Of course, if you're more of a classic RPG guy, there are still tons of games releasing that are supposed to be direct callbacks to those older games. Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler. If you're not a fan of modern Final Fantasy, these games bring us back to a simpler, far slower time. Yeah, I'm not as into this. When you program a fast forward button into the base game, I feel like you could have just designed the gameplay to be more efficient. But god, Octopath, there isn't any other game that looks quite like this. And the music! Kingdom Hearts answers the age-old question of what would happen when you put Final Fantasy and Disney together. Actually, I don't know if it does or not. And all these games come courtesy of Square Enix, your one-stop shop for RPGs. They've also released other iconic titles like Chrono Trigger and the Mana series, which is interesting considering it was one of the few classic RPGs that went for an action approach comparative to turn-based. While I highly disagree on The Legend of Zelda being an RPG, at least one entry in the series is definitely one. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. You kill enemies to level yourself up in various departments. I like it. Zelda 2 gets a lot of flack, but it's honestly pretty enjoyable. And Nintendo's RPG series, I mean, we have the Mother series, or Earthbound, which has definitely helped many get into RPGs. Most games of this nature were fantasy, which has its fans, but Earthbound you were playing as a kid in a town. It made it stand out, and I think it helped many find more of an attachment with the genre. Now, Pokemon, on the other hand, can f right off. I've tried so many times, but I just can't get into Pokemon. I feel like I've 100% missed the boat on playing the franchise. If I played it as a kid, I feel like I'd find it easier to enjoy now. If I start the game, I just feel like it's a slog. I don't feel this sense of wonder. I just feel like I'm walking from point A to point B, mashing the A button to get through text boxes, fighting other Pokemon by, again, mashing the A button. At least turn-based works really well here in terms of immersion. You're not the Pokemon, you're commanding them what to do, which I think works much better contextually than most other RPGs. I want to like these games though, I just can't get into them. Same with the Xenoblade series. I'm so happy that this franchise went from not coming outside of Japan to here's a Smash Brothers character, multiple remasters and remakes, a sequel, another sequel, an expansion to the sequel. It's really cool to see that, and I think the original Xenoblade is unbelievably impressive. Like, this world is in a Wii game. It's just not personally really my thing. But then you have Golden Sun. Definitely gives me Dragon Quest feelings of happiness. I do like a lot about this. But then you have the beginner RPGs from Nintendo, based on the Mario franchise. Super Mario RPG, Mario & Luigi, Paper Mario, many of these games actually make turn-based combat fun. They have action commands, which means, hey, pick an attack, then time your action just right by hitting a button at this exact moment. It's almost like a rhythm game. It keeps me involved and entertained. Sure, some of the games are dog shit, but I think these games help tremendously in conveying the appeal of RPGs to those who don't play a ton of them. No matter how much you enjoy role-playing games, you have to admit, they aren't the easiest to jump into most of the time. You gotta wean yourself on a Mario RPG before you jump into Persona 5. Holy f***, this game is so stylish and cool. Listen to the music, the setting is so neat. I think I've become an RPG guy. And I fucking hate myself. What am I? What have I become? How do I even use one of these? Ah! Oh!
Hello, my name is God.
Oh my god, I meet Jesus and a Target employee in the same week?
I just wanted to give you a formal warning on your recent performance as a human. You're really f***ing it.
I don't want to f*** anything. What did I do wrong?
First off, that time you drank that water and made a face, f*** you. I make water. Second off, you're trying to be an RPG guy.
I thought that's what everybody wanted.
See, I crafted humanity to have the instinctive trait to not like RPGs.
So that's why cavemen never played them.
Then all of a sudden, evolution was like, f*** you, here's Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber, the famous game that everybody loves, and ever since we've had a bunch of mutants walking around playing RPGs.
So it's normal to not like RPGs?
It's normal to not like all kinds of things, whether it's RPGs or murder.
You never would have known.
Scott, Bubby, you know who you are and what you like and don't like. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not an RPG guy. You know this deep down, but that doesn't mean you should immediately denounce every RPG that you come across. Even though RPGs were never meant to be enjoyed, people like them for some reason. You should respect and understand that as much as they should respect and understand you. But even if you generally don't like something, giving it a try from time to time can open your eyes to great experiences you would have never had otherwise.
Can I add you on LinkedIn? I think I get it. I'm not an RPG guy! And sharks are just sexy fish at the end of the day. RPGs aren't my go-to genre, and that's okay, just like how everybody doesn't like platformers or sports games or first-person shooters or party games. My criticisms of RPGs were just opinions. They're the same reasons why people love RPGs, and that's okay! But that doesn't mean I can never like RPGs. I really like Dragon Quest, and some Final Fantasy games I like, and I'm just really happy that Xenoblade's doing well, and Persona 5 is really cool. No, I'm going too far.
This, 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 this.